Everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Fearcast. This is the podcast dedicated to OCD and anxiety spectrum disorders and getting your life back. I'm your host, Kevin Foss, and I'm a licensed therapist specializing in OCD and anxiety disorders. And thank you all so much for joining me for today. So for those of you who are new, this is a question and answer-based podcast. You can send me questions about OCD and anxiety and living with anxiety and treatment and recovery and what that looks like, how to talk to a therapist, how to talk to friends about anxiety. Whatever you'd like, send it my way. I will read it, consider it, and likely put it up on a future episode. So if you have a question, go over to fearcastpodcast.com, send me a message over there. You can also send me a message over at Instagram. I am Fearcast Podcast over there. Send me a DM and record your voice if you want your question to go to the top of the list. Send it over there, and we'd love to have it. We'd love to hear it, and I'd love to talk about it. So today I'm going to be talking about Jenn's question and going into a little bit of shame and guilt. So I think this actually is a really relevant question for a lot of folks just across the board. So it's not a particular subtype that we're going to be focusing on today. It's kind of more of a broad sort of focus, which I think is great. And I think is relevant to everybody out there. But I just hope everybody out there is doing well. The world just keeps getting crazy. And what's so interesting, I was giving a talk at college yesterday, actually, and came across this statistic that was talking about how the world is getting more and more anxiety-provoking. The ADAA talked about this, and now I'm having this flashback. Like, did I talk about this on last week's episode? I hope not. I might have. I might just be going nuts. We'll see. But that anxiety is every year and year things are getting more and more anxiety-provoking. So, I because of all of that, I'm not going to quote the statistics because now I'm in my head about whether or not I actually talked about them last week. But if it really just punctuates and I think reinforces the importance of podcasts like this, information out there, other podcasts or other things that you're finding out there to find ways to deal with not only just anxiety, but also, not just OCD if that's your thing, but also just the anxiety of living life and having jobs, having relationships, going to school, just trying to interact with people around us. It's a tough time to be out there, and I just really reading that and talking about that, I think, just emphasizes the importance of this. So I'm not going to do much more yammering today. I'm just going to kind of get on with it. So here is Jenn's question. So Jenn says, "Hi, Kevin. I'm writing to ask about how to deal with the aftermath of OCD. You talk a lot about dealing with compulsions and managing OCD, but what about the shame and guilt following OCD episodes? My OCD centers around sexual thoughts, and one of my compulsions is confessing. So as a result, I've done a lot of confessing to my parents about sexual thoughts, confessing checking compulsions, reassurance seeking around masturbation, and past sexual experiences, etc. As you can imagine, being an adult and sharing these intimate things with my parents is not only embarrassing, but also shameful. They know that I continue to see an OCD therapist, and although the confessing, reassurance seeking is more under control, it continues to feel like a huge elephant in the room, and I don't feel like an independent adult anymore. I feel like I can't have a normal sexual life. I feel consistently triggered, exposed, and embarrassed when I'm around them, when I'm with them. In fact, this has made me feel more fearful and ashamed of sex. I can't undo the past. So how do I fix things now? It discourages me so much. Even if I get the OCD under control, it's already ruined everything, and it feels too late to have a normal life now. I've permanently changed my dynamic with my parents. So, Jenn, I appreciate this question, and I've worked with folks in my office, and who have shared similar experiences and have felt like they were doing really well, or after a long stretch of difficulties, so now they're in this place of doing really well, and they question whether or not they've ruined everything from their past, or they can't talk to old college roommates or old college friends because of, what life was like in the midst of their OCD. Maybe even things went really well for a long time. And then a huge flare-up happened and just really threw things through a loop. And unfortunately, what that does for some people is that it sends the message, gosh, I've ruined it. Now they see me for who I am, or now they've, seen my craziness, or whatever verbiage that people use or you might be using about yourself or against yourself. They come to this conclusion that because of this, you just simply can't go back, and you got to shut that door forever. Now, for some people, they make that choice when it comes to friends, roommates, things like that, because, you can, quote, you can cut out an old roommate and you can get away with it, right? You'll make new friends, et cetera, et cetera. But parents are a different story. For a lot of folks, parents are, a permanent fixture in their life. They're someone they're going to see. They're someone they're going to want to see in their life throughout the course of their life. So cutting that person out isn't as easy as just a friend, right? Now, this isn't me here advocating go out and cut friends out of your life. But, a lot of people justify things like that for a lot of different reasons. So I want to talk a little bit about this today because, for any reason, and Jenn, yes, you have your reasons that you went through your compulsions and are now. And first off, I'll say it's fantastic. Congratulations! You're working through the process. You're doing better now. Compulsions are less. That's wonderful, and there's still this kind of leftover thing, and this leftover thing, the shame and guilt, can pull you back into the compulsive cycle. So let's jump into that a little bit. So first, I want to talk about the difference between shame and guilt. So we've talked about shame and guilt on this podcast before. You've heard me yammer on about it. Just very quickly, the difference between shame and guilt. So shame is going to be that bad feeling that you get when you are something bad. Right? So it's like the core of you is somehow bad or broken or tainted. And then from the core of you being bad, anything that comes out of that is going to be bad, right? That's all you can expect from you. Guilt, on the other hand, is going to be that bad feeling that you have when you've done something bad. Now, there's a key difference between those two. Guilt implies that, we make bad choices sometimes and we feel bad. And, guilt can be a great biological feeling, and shame to a certain degree as well. But guilt really says, gosh, you know what? You did something against your values. You messed up. Get back on the straight and narrow, right? Straighten up and fly right, whatever. But it implies, I messed up, but I can do better and I'm still a good person. Right? Shame, on the other hand, says you screwed up because that's what you do. You're a screw up, and this is your life now, right? Guilt really implies that you can make changes and improve. Shame says there's no changing from this, right? So with shame, and I'm hearing shame certainly in especially as you ended your email to me. There's a lot of shame in there because it says, like, I've ruined this forever. There's no fixing this. I can't come back from this. What did you say? I've permanently changed my dynamic with my parents, right? You said, it's already ruined everything. I've already ruined everything, and it feels too late to have a normal life now, right? It's a foregone conclusion. I'm here to challenge that, all right? And I want to offer some things to think about. So first off, and I know we've talked about this before, it's important to shift our language from from shame into guilt, right? I'm stealing this directly from Brene Brown. Brene, if you're listening to this, thanks. She is not. She's got other things better to do. But if she is, I want you on the podcast. So it's this idea of, like, we want to change our language from shame into guilt. We want to be able to say, all right, in this situation, I might have messed up. I might have made a mistake. I might have, overstepped or done more compulsions, and I wish I didn't do it. And you know what? I'm going to learn from this. I'm going to learn that I can do better. I'm going to learn in a similar situation, instead of giving into my compulsion, I'm going to challenge the thought. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to face my fear, like fill in the blank with however you want to talk about it, right? But you're going to say, I'm going to do something different in the future. Again, that pulls you away, pulls that experience away from you at your core. It says, I'm not bad and broken. You may say, I still make mistakes, but I'm still a good person. Now, that's a really hard thing for someone who's experiencing shame to sit with and to acknowledge. So that's where it's important to really be resisting falling into that shame trap, and instead challenging yourself and saying, all right, brain, all right, I know I messed up, but you know what? I'm going to do better next time. I can do better because I'm worth it. My relationships are worth it. And I can make those positive changes, even though it might be hard, even though it might be uncomfortable because it's going to remind me of those mess ups, but I'm still worth it and can do it. Okay. So also to think about this, OCD in general it's kind of about this confirming and disconfirming feared stories process, right? So the anxious story comes up, the obsession comes up, and it says something about you that you don't believe to be true. I don't really like that. I want to, and then we get into this compulsive cycle of proving something else or disproving the fear. Right? Now, in the process of doing that, as we know, once you do the compulsion that kind of fits that lock or kind of rounds up to feeling okay enough, it reinforces the cycle because now you feel good and confident and comfortable again, despite the fact that you just had this random, silly, nonsense thought that ultimately you disbelieved or you don't believe would be true in the first place. So we want to be acknowledging that that's that cycle. But then again, remember, shame is also self-fulfilling, self-confirming in its sense too. Because what shame does is it keeps the feelings, keeps our thoughts, it keeps our relationships hidden in the dark, suppressed, right? We don't seek relationships. We don't seek more relationships to help disconfirm our fear that we are this terrible, horrible, bad person and no one likes me or loves me. Instead, we hide, we avoid other people. And all that does is confirms no one likes me, no one loves me because no one's talking to me. No one's talking to me about this, but sometimes that just means it's because we are holding back from other people. Now, I don't know everybody's scenario, Jen. I don't know about every scenario that you've had or every interaction that you've had, but this is one of those dynamics that can certainly happen. And with shame, it is an isolative experience, and it just confirms that idea that we're bad, right? So what I've heard you say in this is, OCD says you've gone too far, right? You've done too much. You've confessed too much. Gosh, they know way too much about you. Woof. Woof. Allergies, they get into me. All right. It's that you've gone too far and you just can't repair this. Okay. But here's what I want to ask. Actually, before I even get into that, you say that like it's a fact, like you know that you can never repair that relationship, that you know that relationship is broken, or that the dynamic is changed forever, as if that's a bad thing, right? So, a couple of things to that. We need to remember that change doesn't always mean bad. We can change for the better. Sometimes when we change things, it's better than it was before. OCD tells us this narrative. Anxiety tells us this narrative. To a certain degree, culture tells us this narrative that change is bad always. Whereas what if through this process you could strengthen your relationship with your parents? What if through this process you could build a new, stronger, more vulnerable, more clear, more trusting, more supportive relationship than you had before? What if that was a possibility? If that was a possibility, Jen, would you want to try to grab it? Would you want to try to go for it? Well, continuing on with that shame and believing the idea that nothing can ever change from this, that is certainly not going to give you the motivation or the willingness or the desire even or the hope to try. So instead, that's where I want you to shift into this idea of the guilt language, right? Okay, I went beyond what I wanted to do, and I'm going to do something different this time, right? So I'll ask you this. Do your parents know what OCD is? Do they know how it works? Do they know how it works for you? Now, you've told them all this stuff, but I ask the question, do they know what OCD is? Because some parents, some friends, some loved ones, they don't understand, they don't quite get it, or they haven't been taught or shown what's actually happening under the hood, right? We talk about this here on the podcast all the time, right? Compulsions are done to try to get a sense of certainty and peace again. And the obsessions themselves don't reflect the true nature of the person. Instead, they reflect oftentimes the opposite of what someone believes is striving to be, right? So do they know that? I ask you that because it can be helpful if you haven't had that conversation. Have the conversation. Send them a podcast on it. Send them an article about OCD. Have them in on one of your sessions and have your therapist talk to them about what OCD is and is not. And then you can talk about how OCD works. I've had podcast episodes on how to share this with parents, so I'm not going to belabor that today. But it's important to be willing to have that conversation so that they know. And from that, they can piece it together as to why it is that you did this, why it is that you went through all these compulsions of reassurance seeking and confession and all that stuff. They know, and they're adults, ma'am. They're adults, and they know what sex is. They know how sex works, and all that. The fear, though, is what if they're not judging you for it? Talk to them about that. Ask them how they feel about it. Now that you've recognized that you've gone through this whole process, talk to them about how you feel and what your hopes are for the future of your relationship, right? Have they shared that they're judging you? Have they shared, hey, Jen, we think you're a big old weirdo. We don't want a relationship with you anymore. Or are you doing what some people with anxiety might do, which is to mind read and project onto other people? Maybe, possibly. I wouldn't put that on you, but possibly. Maybe you're anticipating something that isn't true. I'll put it this way. How good are you, and other listeners, how good are you at predicting the future? I'm willing to bet you're not that great. I suck at it. I'm willing to bet you suck at it too. And good. If we suck at it, anxiety is going to put out there and says, this is how the future is going to go. We can say, I don't know that for sure. And maybe you'd be willing to take the risk to do it. So, one of the ways that we can overcome shame is by putting ourselves in healing relationships with other people. And that sounds foreign and crazy to someone who feels thoroughly rejectable and rejected. So instead of feeling like you need to get back the relationship that you had, I want you to put yourself in a situation where you can build new memories with them, build new interactions with them, so that you can continue on growing as a family, as that parent-kid relationship. Kid, I don't know how old you are. You said you're an adult. But carrying on a new relationship. And the more times that someone with shame puts themselves in relationship, they're giving themselves more and more opportunity to be seen, to be accepted, to be validated, and to be loved. That is something that isolation will never provide for you. Isolation promotes the idea that you are rejectable and unloved and that you are broken. Now, for those of us with shame, we don't get to have our life back without shame, without that voice. It sucks. There's nothing that's going to bring that world back, but that's okay. What we want to do, though, is to put ourselves, again, in situations where other people can show us that we are still worthy and acceptable, and we've made mistakes in the past, right? Find me a single person who's never made a mistake, or said a weird thing, done a weird thing, done something that goes against their values. You're never going to find someone. And if you produce someone, you know who I'm going to say that you're a liar, or that they are, right? We've all made mistakes. And yet what do we all do in the effort of, kindness and logic? We round that person up. For the most part, we round that person up to still good. They are someone who's made mistakes, and they're still good people. Jen, you've made mistakes and you're still good people, right? This is what I talk to my kids about when they go into a negative thought pattern. I say, you're good kids who made mistakes. And you know what? I need to say that to myself when I get in my silly loops. I say, I'm a good kid who makes mistakes. So now there's nothing that I'm going to be able to say, nor any podcast, nor any book on anxiety or shame or depression that is going to eliminate this bad feeling. Unfortunately, again, that thought's there now. But we can put ourselves routinely, consistently in interactions where we can have a reparative experience with that other person, where they can love on you and support you and show that you are accepted and have made mistakes. And that's what I'm encouraging you to do. So you've said, it discourages me so much, even if I got the OCD under control, it's already ruined everything. Instead, I want you to say, I am a person in progress and in process, and go hang out with your parents. Go watch a movie with them. Go out to dinner with them. Go on vacation with them. And not every relationship, not every interaction needs to be talked about as, hey, remember that time, and I'm so sorry, and oh my gosh, I made mistakes, and I'm this awful person. Don't even address it. I'll say this. You can have a conversation and say, I want to try to make things better. I want to try to continue on with this relationship. Once you say that, you don't need to bring it up. Instead, be their kid. Be an adult. You have to build your adult relationship with your parents too. It's hard and it's weird to be an adult around your parents because you've been a kid for so long and they've been a parent for so long and they've had that dynamic. And as you shift that to become kind of both adults, you build this new relationship and build this new thing with them. But go and do that. Don't make every relationship and interaction about your OCD, about apologizing or trying to make up for the past or trying to recreate the past. Instead, be present, try to build a new relationship and have those interactions with them. So I could go much more into shame on this, but I'll just encourage you with that. And I appreciate you sharing this. And if anybody has further questions about shame, I would love to talk more about this. Again, I've done shame episodes in the past. So if you are new to the podcast and you've never heard us talk about shame, just Google Fearcast podcast shame, and there'll be some episodes that pop up. So go check those out. And Jen, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for trusting us with this information and trusting me that I would handle this well, and I hope I have. So, but I'll say this: you're a good kid who makes mistakes, because we are all good kids who make mistakes sometimes, and we need to remember that we can learn and grow and change and continue to be loved and accepted by others in life. So, Jen, best of luck, and thanks so much. Thank you for listening to the Fearcast. If you would like your question answered on a future episode, please click on the Submit a Question link at fearcastpodcast.com. If you would like your question answered sooner, please send me a recording of your question to questions@fearcastpodcast.com, or by sending me an audio message through Instagram by DMing me at fearcastpodcast on Instagram. If you like the Fearcast, please write a review on your podcast platform of choice. Please remember that the Fearcast is not a substitute for psychotherapy. If you need a little bit of help in your recovery, please go over to fearcastpodcast.com and click on the Find Help link, and there's going to be some information for you there. So until next time, take a risk, challenge yourself, and don't take your brain too seriously. Bye.